звенит. So how we counteract, combat the threats, and so this I'll talk about the trends, about what's going on. And so first, a few words about the company. The company was set up in 2003, and it grew out of a small lab, Kaspersky lab, and then we separated and became an independent company. So there are two independent groups, and our product line is solutions for corporate IT security solutions. And this is so nothing but that. So this is the most important. So, and certainly we have achieved a great deal of success in this area because corporate security solutions, we are company number one. So then here we have lots of clients, more than 350 clients we have. Most of them are large companies, large corporates. So let's speak about this scene. So how it all looks from the viewpoint of corporate security. So at the beginning of the century, I would so the year of antiviruses. That was the most important task of IT security. Was to speed up the exchange of information. That was the order of the day, and so then the functionality of the systems and sustainability and availability. So for us as the security guys, so that was the time to protect ourselves, companies from viruses, and so they kept changing. So new viruses, new trends appeared all the time. So we had to protect, and it lasted for a certain period of time until it turned into so the viruses keep popping up, and so 300,000 viruses pop up every day. So they keep changing and morphing into something else, and so they're trying to avoid security measures. So that's why from this point, they just got worse, but nothing changed, and there are many more. So, but we got accustomed to something inevitable, and so now we learn how to react quickly, respond properly, and so everything is more or less okay. And then something then the DLP security era started 2000 2009. Then so they realized that information can leak, can be stolen, and etc. can disappear, and so I called it certainly in a far-fetched manner. So I called it an era because this era goes on, and this is still there. But there's a new trend now, more. And this trend is so protecting your IT perimeter against leaks and theft, and so then secure storage of data and transfer of this data, and so then the paradigm needed to be changed. So the documents were made of were paper documents, paper exchange, paper flow. But by 2010, so the majority of documents became electronic documents, and the concept of protection of these documents changed naturally. And by 2010, so we realized that to DLP protecting only documents is not sufficient like DLP does it. So we need just to forestall other risks, so which keep popping up. And so we decided so the era of business protection. So this is fighting, combating risks, because like mushrooms in corporate started to appear. So the companies so offering you protection against the risks. So there's a simple software, difficult software, and this could be an Excel table that actually reflects the risks, maybe consultations, which is a way to protect the company from risks. Ernst & Young does that, just gives consultation, provides consulting services. But anyways, all related to risk. And we fully realize that if the information is lost, that's bad. That's very bad, and so there is no need to talk about that. If we so then how to protect against leaks of information? Because at the end of the day, so we put up a monitor so on all channels. So we catch this information, analyze it, and then we either block it online, and so that happens in 60-70% of cases, or just we let it go through, but then provide this information to the security officer, so that this information was an attempt to steal this information. And then we do the monitoring, and so we know just who, how, where to send this information. This is the concept of DLP. And so now the trend is changing. So just we decided to, we don't know how to call it, what to call it, and so we isolated a new product category and decided to call it internal threats information security, because DLP is actually to some extent is internal threats information security as well. So then in-house threats protection. But we decided to name it so ITIS. That we coined this new abbreviation. What's the difference between DLP and ITIS? So the ability to isolate suspicious trends and to block. So we did not analyze the entire gamut of a corporation, but only the zones that we deem are suspicious. We deem suspicious. And so just we've been doing that for many years, about 10 years, so we know a lot about that. And so we do reporting as well, so how the leaks are organized and in which way so the information is leaked and through which channels. And so you can see, so for example, the channels of leaks. So in 2014, the trend about faced all of a sudden. So while someone was saying that there were paper documents, that was the main channel of loss. Then in 2014, the main channel is network. Network is cloud. It's cloud. This is where the fish, and now the cloud technologies came to our lives, and so now they're happy that now just information can be stolen from the cloud. And this is very easy. So paper documents so became so second in importance. So losses, for example, I left my my tablet in a taxi car, for example, or I lost my smartphone, or I had my tablet stolen. So this is 16%. This is number 3, and the rest, for example, email that is protected by corporations is only number 4, and so which is far behind. Very interesting chart because it shows what channels need to be protected. And so the statistics. So we collect statistics on all leakages that we identified in the press, in the world, published information about the leakage. So we put it on the list. And so 2014, so we have about 1,700 leakages took place. And then we analyze how, through which channels. So understand that this so leakages into the press, this is the top of the iceberg. It's only 1% that got into press. But even judging by this 1%, you can get an idea, you can get a cross-section and identify the trends. And from the viewpoint of types of information, 92% personal data leakage. 92%. Why? It's obvious. So personal data is liquid, can be sold. It's know-how, it can be used. And so very often it's the client databases where the bank's database is stolen, and then they say so we can just offer a deposit at 2% cheaper, or a loan at 1% cheaper, and so then people go for it. Then the commercial secret is behind, only 4%, and the state secret is only 1.7%. But this is a lot because it's quite sensitive, because the state secret, because so there are several hundreds of thousands of leakages all over the world, and 1.7% for state secrets is a lot. Then so this is the picture. It's certainly it's very versatile. So medicine, so broken down by industries. So medicine in Russia, it's banks, and medicine is global. So global leakages. Why? Because liquid data. So they steal patients' data, and then they offer certain services to the patients what they can sell. Then education institutions and the special agencies and state authorities, number 3. And banks and financiers is only number 6 in the world, and in Russia, banking leakages is number 1. And so then examples of retailer, a big retailer, for example, that sells food and had a database of their employees, and one of the employees stole and put it in the social networks, information about salaries, put it all up for everyone's scrutiny, and so the company had to certainly to pay. And so that's a leakage, so which kind of dented their financial position. Then the second example, it's so a bank employee with an access, DLP. Always talk about this, so the people who have an access, legal access to certain. So that's why. So then the access controls and scripting. So it doesn't protect because he has an access and that's it. So he had this the data about the VIP clients with the PIN codes, and he would stash this information away, and then he stole 3.5 million rubles, and then he was caught with his hand in the jar, and so they stopped the guy's activities. Like any other IT, so all these organizational methods, so then commercial secret, regulations, procedures, dividing the rules of access, etc. It's all done. This is the front line. First thing. So this is a big headache in many companies and the commercial secret mode. So sometimes it takes them years to introduce the system, and then they have certain technical methods of control, and there are none. There are none very good. So you install it and forget about it, plug in and forget. No, there are no such. It's additional headache, a big load. So that is why the service is always fighting those methods. So there is a fight between the IT guys, the security guys. So one want to impose, others want to, they're shying away from it. And then you can only block any access, right? There's many banks do that. They just block, so no internet access is available. That's it, period. Some banks do that. And but for example, if a computer can get to internet, so then we need to find a ways how to tiptoe around those bans and still figure out a way to organize a leak, and then a leak will be much more serious. And then so what spying the staff. But it doesn't work because the efficiency is very low. Spying the personnel, and then so the let me talk about our comprehensive approach to protect data. So our approach is different. Many companies now copy us because think that the main means to protect is not software. So as a means to many think that this is software, you've just installed it. No. So the only ways to protect against leakages and leaking information is the changing of mental state. So several stages. So this it's mindset. So if you take an antivirus, so I understand antivirus is looking for viruses that are put on the database or just using different algorithms. But when we're catching a leak, for example, so for a bank, so then for oil company, it's one vulnerability. For a bank is another vulnerability. So the power company is another vulnerability. So they understand it differently. That's why we want to catch a leak. Then if there's an oil company, someone will be looking for the CVs, right? Another company would be looking for certain documentation, production documentation. So that's why at that initial stage we need to understand what is it that we're going to catch. Because we don't know what we're looking for, we can't catch it. So so then there's a pre-DLP stage, which is we do the audit of IT security. So show me what you got. And so we need to understand what is it that you need. And then the data classification, because without it, it doesn't make sense. And then the introduction, the methods how to maintain the commercial secret. And then software, and the third stage, you can do the corrective measures, adjustment, tuning of software, and then corrective measures, adjustments, etc. But pre-DLP is certainly is a guarantee of successful program, and so you need to give a list of policies, developing. So lots of moves need to be done, and so the better they develop this stage, the more successful the final installation will be. I like this picture. So in the basement. So usually before we we move into a new corporation, everything is in a heap. You see on the left side, and then we launch this program. So pre-DLP, everything is in its place, everything on its shelf, and everything clean and nice and very neat and tidy. And so we tell them how we catch. And it's very easy to catch if it's not just lying in a heap, right? So then the DLP stage, it's a software that does the analysis and the catching. So there are many channels that need to be combed. So now we connect voice. Yeah, voice is huge. Lots of memory is taken. And so we're just only some pilots working on it right now. So that's a big list. And then new technologies which so intercept information. So that's kind of hybrid analysis that allows to attach weights and using these characteristics. So just using only one technology. So this document is not a leakage. So then post DLP is so this is a digital proof for the court, and so because so it's much better to fire a guy than to take him to court, and so it's not using. They're not just dragging guys to court, the bad guys, and I think it's wrong because we need to sue them to start initial. So the entry into civilized world is to eventually. So this will be much in demand, and so they will be sued and tried in court. So I told you what DLP is, and so where the market is moving and where we are moving, and so there is another solution that's still coming. So that would analyze other events that the system of leakage protection is not analyzing yet. So for example, so then irrespectable pronouncements about company and social networks. So the DLP looks inside the company, not outside the company. So the world is getting more and more transparent. The perimeter notion is gone. As it means that we need to intercept not inside but outside as well. And this is. And then the risk models, for example. So then a spy from the competitor. So just got himself hired and eroding the company from inside. So, for example, or just takes care of and then the corporate segments and starts to deal with the things. So suspicious behavior, for example, so can be isolated on the basis of special behavioral patterns, behavioristics. So then on the chart of connections, relationships, and isolate suspicious relations or which ad hoc communications, because it may be just a love affair or maybe collusion, and you don't know what that is. And so the main idea is what we're putting together a certain product, so consulting plus software, which along the lines of certain principles isolate suspicious points, and then inside those suspicious points we identify. So then the people by hand, so using their eyes, their hands, start to work with those suspicious guys. That raises a great deal of suspicion with us, and that's how we analyze, and this is how we can prevent risks. Because in modern world, what we need not only to say, oh my God, I had my document stolen, but to make sure that this document did not disappear, and that the information would not be lost, and that the information will stay in-house before it leaves the walls of the company. And so no collusion, no fraud. So to prevent that and to preclude that, and such systems, in our view, so we need to identify those collusions, because then it will be clear how to do the system. So. And the question is, who is going to be the first to put together this system? And coming to the conclusion, so DLP solution is information security, document security, and it's doing its job. 80% DLP solutions work, and so they keep the information inside. It fights the accidental leakages, not so good, but intentional leakages, not so well, because for a number of reasons mentioned before. That's why we decided the documents by themselves, they do not live by themselves. They're always connected to people. If you analyze the people, then with a much greater degree of certainty, you can identify their behavior and fight those manifestations much better, intentionally, and not in a blind manner. And I think that the market is was going just to move into this paradigm, from protection of documents to the protection of we call it in-house threats. We call it, but at the end of the day, is the analysis of personnel, analysis of staff, of the staff of a company. So where the most vulnerable components will be closely monitored and stopped. And that's all I wanted to. You see how quickly. So I fit into my time slot. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take your questions. Умница она, да?
Нет, вот есть вопрос.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Павел Лосков. Я
I work as a research center Huawei. In Germany, such proposals are very important. So how to protect IT security, but we have very serious laws, strict laws to protect personal data. Yeah, personal data protection, and not only general data, personal data protection, but even so corporate data should be protected. So how do you view it? What the approaches are? That's because this in Germany it's very bad. Everything is bad because Germany is the first market where I would like just to go. We wanted to go, and we immediately came up face to face with the issue: this protection of an employee's data on his job place. Because which is strange, because for example, if you want to work and if you are hired, so then you should work and not just think about the protection, excessive measures of protection of personal data. And so because if you're at work, you need to work. And so the DLP methods that we try to introduce, and always so the trade unions are against, and we can't do that. So the situation is very bad in Germany about that. So the paradigm started to change after this last year. So when Snowden spoke about the mass scale espionage perpetrated by the United States, and so then the idea. So how should you possibly protect the personal data of an employee, remembering in the back of our minds that it's absolutely transparent, so even our chancellor is on the spot, and so that's why this idea of protecting private lives, personal lives, becomes ridiculous. But the German society is very conservative. The laws are changing very slowly. I think another 2-3 years will pass before they change this attitude. And in 2009, I think we tried just to access the German market, and so we tried to do that for a couple of years, but we didn't find a single DLP. So in Germany, DLP means we're not selling, and so there's blocking ports and other security measures, and they passed them off as DLP measures, but they were not DLP measures. So there was not a single business where DLP could be introduced, and so then DLP is not selling. So now just they started to talk, oh, maybe we need to watch the documents and we need to watch closely the employees. So let's divide the database of the incidents, and only special guy would have an access to this system. So the principle of 4 eyes. So simultaneously with the key, and so we just open up the database and see what's going on. So only then they can get an access. Otherwise, this access is denied. Period. So I can block it. But if there's a mistake there, and so then the small mistakes, which is this artificial intellect of the first or second order, so there may be some mistakes. But you will have to get an access to the database anyway if we are to do anything about security. So theoretically, it's possible to do that the software would meet certain requirements, and at the same time not to not to violate the rules of privacy. So I don't know, just personal lives, etc. Data protection, personal data protection system, and but we need to understand that we need to improve this four eyes principle, then some other things. So then there is a law on the protection of personal data, private lives, and so then there is a law on storing information that needs to be stored for 10 years. There's another law, and there is a law that the companies are responsible for data protection in-house, because which goes counter because they cannot install DLP measures, and that's why there's a collision, contrasting interests, because they need to do that. At the same time, they cannot put up the measures protecting eventually. So we'll make a special version of software that the Germans would be happy with. Dmitry Markin. So the question. So the business wants to control corporate channels, internet, but at the same time, there's an official position that any person can come to work with his own gadget, independent channel of access through the base station to internet, to his own emails, on tablets. What's the point of introducing DLP system? Because we can just ban on catch only the official channels, but there's always another way out, because risks. Because you can just block only the official channels, but not. Yeah, but certainly, but you need even just to close shut the front door. This is important. At the same time, understand this vulnerability. So then this principle, bring your own device, that everyone is promoting, advising, and advertising. Because at the end of the day, I think this is a disaster for IT security. This is a disaster because the main source of leakage of information is a smartphone. A smartphone is a small computer, can do anything, just like a big computer. And
and it has more opportunities because it uses other protocols. Very difficult to control it. So now in the market, there is no solution that would protect the information. There are MDM solutions, mobile device management class, that allows you to control, to monitor security, but in fact security setting to do on the mobile devices, but they will not control the content because it's a very complicated thing. So how do you arrange it on a computer? Very simple at the endpoint, and mainly this is server part. It means that we upload everything to the server, then analyze all those technologies, so 8 technologies, so they all keep working, and then they will provide the verdict. And if you do it on the mobile device, you need to mirror the information. You need to understand what and where, and the channels are very difficult, very convoluted. As an agent, you can make it as an agent, but go to the low level. What do you mean? So you need to support all the variety, and now we have approximately 4,000 types of mobile devices with different iOS, OS, and no vendor, including Symantec, cannot support all these zoo. So probably 6 or 10 cell phones would be supported, but from the content point of view, Symantec tried, now they announced, but very few do it. I mean, this protection. For a long time, we have been thinking how to address it. On one hand, we tried to take 6 cell phones. So in the fall, we're going to come up with our solution. But then we decided it's wrong. It's only 6 models. So we decided to make our own device, and in the fall we shall go to the market with it, and we shall try to market them. Very difficult to arrange such solution. Either a company will make a decision that they will only select several versions and will not allow to bring your own phone of a different type. Either we distribute 6 types of cell phones, or we try to support the zoo, but we know that we shall have creeping points. So there is no nice and workable solution. No. So on your right. So I want to talk about those internal, behavior breaches, and to analyze. I'm in a bank. Actually, we see more and more solutions in the market, but they're very, different. So either you can watch what the behavior on the working station, or attempt to penetrate the DBs, or try to find links in the social network to find out if your employee is connected to some criminal gangs or whatever, who will buy the content, or competitors. But there are no centralized solution that would collect everything into a console. You're working on it, right? But the most interesting question is when you're going to make it and how much is going to cost, because your costs are very high. Will the small companies afford it? If it's affordable for big companies, so step by step it will become affordable for. So far there's a trick, there's a catch. One thing is to present nicely, but another is to develop such a solution. I'm not sure it's absolutely possible. For instance, if we have this cross-section between technologies, we shall have connections or conclusions that will give you false results. And it's hardly possible. So why the solutions do not exist? Because no one tried to combine. We tried to combine some graphical connections or technologies that allow to, for instance, trace negative feedback in social networks. We understand how to look for negative feedback, but there is a catch in the user ID. You can link it to DLP, but we are not sure if this system can be developed at all. And I cannot tell you about the price. So I guess we shall come up with a new version, the beta version of the system next fall. But speaking about the prices, I can tell you, as a rule, the solution is going to be very expensive in the beginning, but as you scale it, the price will go down. If it works, we shall be able to reduce the price. But the question is if the solution will be efficient enough, if it's possible to create it at all. Can you please tell me if you plan to distribute this solution? Now, antiviruses and cryptographic protection means are quite popular, and when you start to deploy them, there is never a question why. But speaking about DLP, CE, and IPS and other systems, so people always ask, why do we need it? Because it's not going to give us anything. It will only make our work harder. So we have been promoting DLP since 2007. We have a department, an analytic department, collecting the leaks, reports, and things like that. We are serious about it. We made a conference. We published books. We have a portal about internal leaks. So everything, within our power, we're trying to. But DLP has a serious issue. When I was showing my approach, pre-DLP and DLP and things like that, unfortunately, the company expects that DLP is software, like antivirus. So you just come and install it, and it will show you all the leaks. And sometimes when people install it, deploy it and it catches nothing. So companies get disappointed. But this thing does not work automatically. First, you need to understand what you're going to catch. So why small companies have very little acceptance of DLP? Because they don't know how to arrange cheap consulting. Consulting is always expensive. They need to come, they need to set it up. But you cannot, charge $1 for it. So it means that 200,000 rubles solution for a small company is either a fake or contains principles. So what we do, we just make solution for banks, for utilities, for sectors, 17 verticals currently, and each vertical installs the vertical DLP. But each company is individual, and the risk is that we are going to catch something wrong, not what the company requires. So fine-tuning for the company is necessary. In this respect, DLP is a kind of tricky software because you need to educate, explain, fine-tune, set up. People have to sweat over it. That's why this negative impression. Look, DLP technology is only 10 years old and antivirus is 25. It's more mature. So I guess within the next 15 years we shall learn and probably remove this negative perception. We'd like to request you to approach companies in a more aggressive manner. One day you visited us, your representatives came, and then they just brought some brochures, and that's it. Because how else can we explain and prevail upon our management? So after the conference, approach me. We shall discuss how to become more aggressive. To help you with in your company. So my name is Fyodor. So speaking about promoting DLP solutions, it is a software that is rather positioned as a security one. But what about the state companies, where probably legislation is a higher motivating factor? Or certifications. Do you have any moves in this respect? Look, we have even a person in the analytics department that studies legislation in the countries, probably 10 countries where we are present, and on the information security innovations that can apply to the company, we track, we monitor. For instance, look at the law on personal data. Immediately, we change our software to comply to, for instance, second class. Or another law on something. We immediately try to introduce the relevant changes, but we are a software vendor. And we provide the software, but not a complete solution. We are not an integrator. And if you need a turnkey solution that would be completely compliant, it's not to us. We have partners, we work with all the largest integrators, and there are people who do it best. But if you need to change something in the software, then you turn to us. But it's a very infrequent case, like law on personal data, or for instance, the case with Germany. They have different requirement and the software has to be changed. But once we are not working there, we are not doing it. We keep that in mind. So thank you. I'm still here. If you have questions, please approach me privately. Thank you.